Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this event today for the City Council District candidates. And so we are grateful, I believe, to have every single person in a contested City Council race here with us today. So let's give it up for that. Let's give it up for that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So from our District 1 candidates are Joe Lee and Isabel Piedmont Smith. District 2 candidates, Kate Rosenbarger and Sue Scambolari. District 3 candidates, Hopi Strasberg. Oh, there's Ron Smith over there, Connor Wright. And our District 5 candidates, Shruti Rana and Jenny Stevens. So thank you for being here. Thank our candidates for being here. And really excited to be with y'all today. My name is Mark Fraley. I am the Associate Director of the PACE program at IU. That's the Political and Civic Engagement Program. And really happy to be working with the League of Women Voters on putting together this event. It's a real service to our community, real service to our democracy, and just really grateful to be in the presence of you all today. So this forum, again, is hosted by the League of Women Voters, but we are also pleased to have a number of sponsors. That includes the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the Bloomington Alumni Chapter, IU PACE, Political and Civic Engagement, Kappa Tau Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Monroe County Now, Monroe County NAACP, the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum Indiana Chapter, South Central Indiana Citizens Climate Lobby, and Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana, of Bloomington. So let's give it up for our co-sponsors as well. And thanks to the Delta Sigma Theta, Delta Sigma Theta, the forum is being streamed on Facebook Live, and also special thanks to Cats for recording this event, as well as to our friends at Neil Marshall. So I want to take a minute to review some of the ground rules that we have for this event this afternoon. So each candidate is going to start. They're going to have 1 minute to make an opening statement. Candidates can respond in turn to questions posed by the moderator, rotating which candidate will answer first. Responses are limited to 90 seconds. And thanks to Miles Bihar, who's with us right here, to keeping time with us. Audience members are invited to submit questions on the cards provided. So please raise your hand if you need a card, and have one direct one to the stage. As moderator, I will choose which questions to ask. Each candidate will be asked to make a closing statement, and all the candidates have agreed to civil discourse. So thanks again to everyone for the lively discussion today. And so we will go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start off going with our District 1 candidates. We're going to go for the first opening statements, we will go in order from our District 1 candidates up to our District 5 candidates. So we will start with Joe Lee.
Thank you all for, I'm not sure I need this, but thank you all for being here today. And I am Joe Lee, and I am running for City Council District 1. And this is the first time I've actually run for political office. Although for the last 30 years, I have provided editorial cartoons for first the Bloomington Voice, and for 10 years and then 20 years for the Bloomington Herald Times. So I have a lot of political experience, and the main reason I'm running is there's been a top-down governance in the city of Bloomington for the last 8 years, and especially the last 4 years, that hasn't paid attention to the lived experience and expertise of its citizens. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Is that better? Here we go. Hi, my name is Isabel Piedmont Smith, and I'm running for re-election in District 1. I was born and raised here in Bloomington. My parents immigrated to Bloomington from Germany, so I'm a first generation American. I worked at IU for 24 years as a fiscal officer, so I know about budgets and staying within them. And I am currently working part-time as a baker at Crumble Coffee and Bakery. Check it out. So I am in my 11th year as a city council representative, and I want to continue serving, mainly because I see a lot of things that still need to be done. The Climate Action Plan, which the city adopted in 2021, is something that we need to push forward with sufficient finances and staff. This includes things such as greater transportation options, more funds for bus service, bicycle lanes, making it safe to walk as well, more funds for sidewalks, and the local food network. So there we go. That's one of my top priorities. Thank you so much.
All right, District 2 candidates.
Hi there, my name is Kate Rosenbarger, and I am running for re-election in District 2, which is the northwest side or area of the city. My background is in policy analysis, and I am an attorney. I went to Maurer School of Law. I'm non-practicing, which I like to say is the best kind. I've spent most of my time working in affordable housing and community development at the national level, and then at the very local level in communities and neighborhoods. I am running again because I think that while we have done a lot so far on city council in the last three and a half years, there is still a lot more to do in terms of climate action and sustainability and equity in our city. I believe I try to make decisions that are data-driven and equity-centered, and I plan to do that next time as well. I'm also running to make streets safer and more accessible. Right now we have traffic fatalities, and I think we can really reach zero if we make the decisions for that. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Scambaluri. I want to continue serving my neighbors on Bloomington's northwest side as your city council representative for District 2. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters, to all the co-sponsors, not just for sponsoring this event, but for what you do every day to make sure that we have a good discussion and good conversation around this. These are pretty remarkable days for Bloomington. We have seen remarkable growth, and we are known regionally and nationally for our quality of life, but we have more work to do. And I think that's a universal theme here. In the next few years, we're going to be launching the Hopewell neighborhood, hopefully in response to the need for affordable housing. We're going to move forward with the convention center as a hub for tourism and arts and civic engagement, build out the trades district, build more affordable housing, address the issues of affordability in general. And on a broader level, we also face the opioid crisis, poverty, housing insecurity, and the need to care for the environment. All of those issues are things I want to work on with making data-informed decisions that support our well-being. So I'm Sue Scambaluri. I look forward to talking with you more today.
I'll use this one because it worked. So. Good afternoon. I'm going to say that again. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank the sponsors for inviting me here to Marshall Black Cultural Center into this event. I care about Bloomington. This is my home. I lived here since '74 and was elected to council in 2020. Growing up in Northwest Indiana, I worked in the steel mills with my father in the summer. My mother's parents were immigrants from Hungary. I earned a master's degree in social work from IU and worked 35 years in developmental disabilities, child welfare, aging, and Medicaid. During the last 2 years, I've been teaching a graduate class in IU School of Social Work. As a social worker, I believe in being an advocate for people with disabilities, children in foster care, persons in poverty, senior citizens, people of color, and people in the LGBTQ community. As a member of City Council, it's my duty to advocate for those whose voices have been marginalized. I hope you feel that I have to fulfill that duty, and will vote for me on May 2nd. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Hopi Stassberg, and I'm excited to also be running to hopefully represent District 3 on City Council for this election. This would be my first time running for elected position, and it's been pretty exciting to be able to speak to my neighbors and near neighbors in new and different ways than I have before. So I'm very interested in furthering my engagement with the entire District 3 area. I decided to run for city council. I have kind of a lifelong passion for education and educational resources. And one of the keys to student success in schools is not just what happens inside the classroom, but also community factors that happen outside of the classroom, like food security and housing security and mental health services and things in that category. And I have a lot of diverse experience with some of those populations. So I am excited to talk to you more about that, and you can check out my website at hopi.stassberg.com. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Connor Wright, and I'm also running in District 3 to be a representative on City Council. I'm a lifelong Hoosier. I've always grown up in Indiana and had a connection to Bloomington for a long time when my grandparents went to IU and my parents and lots of aunts and uncles and cousins. It's a whole family affair here in Bloomington, and I love this place. It's near and dear to me, and my brother and sister will be coming here in a few years as well. I'm running because I have an interest in local government through my involvement in the City of Fishers Department of Planning and Zoning when I was in high school, and through being a commissioner on the Environmental Commission here in Bloomington. And that informed my priorities, which are increasing affordable housing and housing affordability, improving transportation around Bloomington and making it more safe and equitable and accessible, as well as improving conservation efforts here in Bloomington to protect our environment from climate change. You can learn more about my campaign at connorforbloomington.com, and I hope for your support on May 2nd. Thank you.
District 5.
Hi, I'm Shruti Rana, running for City Council District 5, and I'm a mother, a lawyer, a professor, and community advocate, and if elected, I would make history as the first woman of color ever to serve on Bloomington City Council. I have worked all over the world and here in Bloomington on human rights and civil rights protections. In Bloomington, I've been a part of the Monroe County Election Board. I've served our police and fire departments on our public safety board, and I've been on the Bloomington Commission for the Status of Women, as well as a number of groups focused on women's rights, reproductive rights, and racial justice. My goals for City Council are to enhance access to childcare, healthcare, build a more inclusive community, protect our citizens and our residents whose rights are under siege all over our state, and build the things that bring jobs and opportunities and people to Bloomington and stay here and invest here. I'd be honored to serve you, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenny Stevens, running for City Council District 5. That are neighborhoods that are Sunny Slopes, Sherwood Oaks, Stands, and all the way up to Gentry Honors and Hoosier Acres. So it's a very large, diverse population and a lot of core neighborhoods. I've been here since 1995. I'm a long-term resident. I chose to stay here with my husband and raise our 3 children. I've worked at Indiana University. Prior to that time, I worked in healthcare. I had a lot of management roles, dealing with bureaucracies, government, regulations, safety of the citizens and the children and the healthcare environment, everything, always looking to build diverse voices together. I care greatly about what happens in our core neighborhoods, in particular, public infrastructure and the investment in the sustainability and using our climate goals to make sure we're doing it well. Public safety in terms of what we're doing with our police and our firefighters. We have shortages. We need to make sure that we are keeping that staffed, and affordable housing. Thank you very much.
All right. And then we're going to start the next question with the District 5, so you get to continue talking, Jenny. So
Thank you.
I will have the first question that I'm going to ask is going to be kind of an overall, overarching question. What do you believe is the primary role of a city council member, and how do you plan engaging in that role as a city council member? So you have 90 seconds to respond to that.
Thank you. The primary role of a city council member is twofold. One is there's a fiscal management oversight of the regular city government and all the essential services that the city is providing. So you're going to be budgeting, you're going to be working on policies. But the other part of that is I'm in a representative role. So I do represent my districts, and I do represent the core neighborhoods. So the people that are living in those core neighborhoods will bring their concerns to me, and they should be rolling up into the city council discussions and into the government's overall of our city. Thank you.
Yeah, Shruti?
Okay, thank you. I think the primary goal is representation. So what I want to know is I want to hear from you. What is impacting you? What do you need? And what can the city government do for you? And I can be that bridge, having the experience of knowing how our city works and how people can work together and say, this is what you need. This is what you're looking for. This is how we can implement it. This is how we can strengthen it in Bloomington. And this is how we can make sure that your voice is heard. And I think it's incredibly important to increase public trust in government. That's what builds a strong community. That's what enables us to work together and get through things like the pandemic and the way that our rights are being taken away in our state. And I think the more that we build that civic engagement, we strengthen our community, we build the kind of community that supports all of us, is truly inclusive, and enables us to have the best future that we can, the future that we all deserve.
All right, moving on to our District 3 candidates. So, Connor.
I think the role of a city council member is to, first and foremost, represent the community if they're supposed to. So if that's at large, it's the entire city. For District 3, that's the northeastern part of the city. And that means representing everyone who is in your district, even though they may not turn out and vote, and even though they may not be of voting age at all. It could be a 17-year-old. There's plenty of students that live in District 3, including a lot of fraternities and sororities, and none of them turn out and vote. Last election, I think there was 4 total out of all the fraternities and sororities on Pratt Road. And there are hundreds and maybe even a few thousand people that live there. So I think it's important to represent everybody, the people who vote and the people who don't vote. But you also need to be a facilitator for your community and make sure that you can utilize the various talents that are in Bloomington and in whatever city that you're supposed to represent. And we have an incredible amount of talent here because we have a world-class university that we're currently sitting in. And we have lots of professors who are very smart and know what they're doing. We have lots of students who are going to be future leaders. And we need to make sure that we can give all of them the tools that they need to make Bloomington amazing and as good as it can be.
All right. Opie.
Excuse me. I agree with Jenny about those two kind of main roles. One is sort of administrative and kind of looking at big level systems of the city and how to make sure that those large level systems are working the way that they need to work in order to serve citizens of the city. But to that end, I also think it's really important as a representative that you need to go out and you need to talk to people and see if those systems are actually working and what people actually need in terms of improvement and modification to the systems or creation of new systems. So to that end, I'm very committed to having regular constituent meetings, and I'm also very interested in rotating the location of those constituent meetings. District 3 is a really, really big district. If you look at it on a map, it encompasses a large area, and they're all really different areas. Mr. Wright here spoke about the primary campus end of student, which includes Fraternity Row, and also the apartment buildings that are to the west of the stadium area. And there are a lot of people who live in those places, and it's predominantly students, but not necessarily all students. And I think sometimes when you get conglomerations of apartment complexes like that, it's better to go to them instead of expect them to come to you. And they need representation too. And sometimes you just really have to reach out. And that is how I plan to behave in terms of city council representation. Thank you.
Okay, Ron.
Thank you. Will you restate the question for me, Mark?
Yeah, so what do you believe is the primary role of a city council member, and how do you plan to fill that role as an elected city council?
Thank you. The primary roles for me is twofold. One is we're a fiduciary body. That's our function. So we're looking at budgets, and so each year we do a budget marathon, and we really work back and forth with the administration and try to figure out what appears to be right, what we can do to represent some of the desires of people in our town who have given us some feedback. So that seems to be a big role. The other role is to reflect what people are saying to us. So I do that primarily I respond to every email that I get from constituents. And one of the ones that was interesting for me to illuminate this is I had an individual who was working to take care of his home, and then there was a variance that was kind of needed in the alleyway with the city. And he presented a pretty compelling case that, well, we didn't need the whole alleyway, the utilities alleyway. So if we could give him some assurance that we weren't going to dig in that and tear his corner of his house down, but we couldn't get that through. But I really argued for that he should have been given that allowance.
Fine.
Thank you.
And Sue.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. It's an interesting one. I don't think we've been asked that yet. You've heard a lot of what's already been said. We have fiscal responsibilities. We have responsibilities to oversee administratively the kind of work the city does. One of the things I've realized, I think, as I've done this work for the past few years, is the different mindsets that people can bring to this work, and both of them are very valid. I think people can approach this work as city council representatives with the mindset of an activist. I care deeply about issue X, whether that's climate or economic development or poverty, and everything I'm going to look at is going to be through that lens and going to be geared towards solving those particular challenges. I think a second way to do this work is as a representative, as a public servant. Okay? I care deeply about the people I represent. I need to understand and proactively seek out their input on what we do. I think that also includes a huge educational role as well. And I need to help people solve problems and equip them with the knowledge they need to connect with their government, to engage with their government. Both of those roles are valid. Both of them have their place. I am pretty solidly the latter. I have taken great pride, and I am so grateful for the residents with whom I've had a chance to work in the last 3 years, because it's been very, very rewarding to see them step up and become more involved and actually take part in their own activities and in their own government. So those are the two general rules I see. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Kate.
Thank you very much. So what I will say is, I think first and foremost, as a district rep, I am a representative of my entire district, which is roughly 13,000 people in the city. And to me, this means students, it means non-students, it means homeowners, it means renters, it means people without homes, it means people in Black and Brown communities, it means people in the LGBTQAI+ community. It means people that come to our council meetings and speak up or email us, and it means people who do not come to our council meetings and do not or cannot speak to us. So for me, it really is about creating an inclusive government and creating equitable policies as a big part of my role on city council. And to me, that means decreasing barriers to participation. So just a very specific example, right now we have council meetings that start at 6:30 p.m. and run until about midnight. We have different pieces of legislation in that space. If you want to come and comment, you pretty much need to be there for the whole meeting, because you don't know what time the piece you're interested in might be presented. So one difference to me would be slotting legislation at specific times, so someone can zoom in or pop into City Hall and comment on that when they're ready. So making things more accessible in that way. Another thing for me is also meeting people where they are. So many people will never show up at a meeting, and I didn't get to do this last time because of COVID, but I'm a proponent of door knocking throughout my term to talk to people who might never show up. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Now moving on to the District 1 candidates. Isabel.
Yes, thank you. Great question and interesting answers. Thank you all to my colleagues. I think it's true that ideally in a direct democracy, like back in ancient Greece, perhaps, where people would come to the town square and actually everybody participate, then yes, direct representation would be the primary goal and the primary role that an elected representative has. But as Kate mentioned, we live in a society where not everybody has an equal voice, not everybody has equal access. And so part of our role, I think, is to be very clear of what principles we're running on and to follow through and act upon those principles. We try to get input, and I agree with Kate that going door to door, even when it's not campaigning, is really the only way to hear from some people, and I think that's a great idea. I've had constituent meetings since 2008, where I've invited people, all throughout my district. And so input is very important, but also recognizing that you're not going to hear from everybody is very important as well. You try to hear from them, but you can also make decisions based on data and based on principle. As far as the actions of council, we do pass a budget. The budget should reflect our priorities. We should fight for that, even though the mayor is the one who brings the budget to us. Passing legislation is the other aspect of what we do. We need to bring legislation to make Bloomington better, and I've co-authored 8 ordinances and 6 resolutions to do that. Thank you.
All right, Joe.
Well, as this is my first time attempting this, I will say that I would represent my constituents. It sounds like an easy thing. A community is a wider area and with the more opinions than one might realize. But I've seen over and over our present council on issues like densification, when so many spoke about things like, if you densify a neighborhood, you have to do something about the infrastructure. These are the things that, this is climate on the ground where people live. And it was never listened to. It passed. We see things like the public safety being moved into the Showers building. 100% of the rank and file of the police and fire department are against that. But it gets voted in. And over, we see these kinds of issues that my motto is to listen to all, to learn from all, and to lead with all. It's a community position. If, the city council, you are all those other people. You're not just yourself.
Okay. And we are going to move now the reverse order. So back District 1 candidates back down to District 5 candidates. So Joe, you get to talk again. So the next question, a lot of y'all talked about representation and knowing that you're going to be working a lot with administration, with members of the county, working with members of the community. If past is any indication, there's a slight possibility that you might encounter people who have strongly different opinions than you do. So what is your approach to working with people who have differences of opinions, and can you give an example of how you've used that effectively?
Well, the first thing you do is listen, because one can learn a great deal by actually listening to what somebody says, because it's important to ask people what they think about a particular issue, and then try to find that common ground. Catherine Hayhoe, who is an environmentalist who was here several years ago, she talked about to find the common ground. If you're dealing with somebody who doesn't accept climate change, you first find where you have a point of agreement and you grow it from there. That you don't get into confrontations, because if you don't listen, you never know that. And so I found that was a really, really important kind of thing to think about. And actually doing the cartoon for the last 30 years, I've gotten a lot of comments and a lot of negative comments. More people will respond when they don't like what you say than when they like what you say. And one learns from that. You see a lot of nuances, and you might change your opinions. I think some of the greatest leaders in the world were the ones that came in with one idea, and by listening to the people who knew more than they did, they actually changed their opinion. I think that is an incredible leadership skill.
Isabel.
Yes. Working with people who have different opinions, this, of course, happens all the time. And I have great respect for all of my colleagues on council and for the mayor, and yet we still disagree a lot, which is fine. I think we learn a lot through discussions that we have with each other, and as Joe said, through discussions we have with the residents that we represent. There's an example of when I sought compromise on a very important issue, which was allowing duplexes and triplexes in traditionally single-family neighborhoods. First, the Plan Commission passed legislation that would allow them in all single-family zones, which I supported. But I knew that there was a lot of resistance to that idea, a lot of different opinions, and thinking that this was a bad thing. So I actually sponsored an amendment that decreased where those would be allowed. And what we ended up passing was that only 15 duplexes and triplexes would be allowed in single-family neighborhoods. So I thought that was good work. We spent many long nights listening and working on that compromise solution. I think definitely respecting people, even if you have a difference of opinion, never getting to a personal attack, just discussing the issue, the problem, and not personalities is very important. And trying to reach out to communities who are often not engaged in the process is very important to consider the impact on those underserved communities.
Okay, District 2 candidates, and Kate.
Thank you very much. Okay, so for me, there are two really big things here. The first one is I like to be curious with folks, and the second one is always assume good intentions. There's a third spoiler. It is, I think what Isabel said, by keeping it professional. And so first, I think being curious is just so very important because, you know, people can have different opinions from you, but you might not know why they have them, right? And you might ask these questions and have these conversations and find out, hey, you are trying to get to the same end goal, but maybe you are approaching it in different ways, right? Or you have a different path to get there, and you can find some similarities along that path. I think assuming good intentions helps everyone sleep better at night. Most of us, or I will actually say all of us elected and people who participate, all want the best for Bloomington, right? And they want the best for their neighborhoods and their kids. And so just really remembering why we are here and focusing that in this process. I will also say something I like to do is work with some of my council colleagues that maybe we tend to disagree on a lot of things, but try to find some ordinances and ideas where we can co-sponsor them and spend that time together and develop those relationships. Also, keeping it professional is very important to me. A council person, we probably disagree or vote different ways 90% of the time, but we still hang out at the dog park with our dogs, you know? So we have that in common. We love our dogs and we can talk about what they ate. I didn't have time to give an example, so I'm sorry about that, but maybe next time.
Okay. All right, Sue.
Maybe next time. So there. Thank you again. This is a great, I love the questions you're asking. I'm actually going to start with an example. Fairly early on in my tenure on council, so this would have been 2020, it became you started to see patterns in people's priorities on council, and you started to see a group of 4 that tended to vote similarly and another group of 4 that tended to vote similarly. And then there was me. Okay, that's fun. All right. So what's interesting to me is not right about that time, I had a colleague pull me aside privately and say, Sue, you have to choose. You have to choose. And I wish I would have come up with a more elegant response, but my semi-elegant response was, says who? Okay. I don't believe, and I reject the notion that we can make assumptions and place our colleagues in boxes and make assumptions about what they will and will not vote on or what they do and do not care about. I think there is always opportunity for discussion and for conversation. And I think we are at our healthiest when we have some of the difficult conversations as well. I think that this also extends, we've spoken mostly in terms of county or of city council so far, but I think this also extends very critically to city and county relationships as well. And as president of council currently, I'm exploring opportunities together with Kate Wiltz, who is head of the county council, to look at exactly those kinds of opportunities. So thank you.
All right.
I don't want that microphone.
I'm moving down to District 3 candidates. Ron, with your favorite microphone.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. it's interesting. That happens all the time on city council where we have different views. There's 9 of us, and then there's the administration. So we really have to discuss and figure things out. One of the things I think is really great, and one of the techniques I always look for is let's look for a common ground. The Venn diagram. There's always common ground, and if you work with people and talk to them long enough, you realize even if they believe different things about politics and other things, that we have common ground. So I believe that that's incredibly important. Maybe one of the things that is a good example is when we were doing the Hopewell project, the new hospital. At first, the administration laid out some architectural development of big blocks and everything. And I just was like, okay, because I'm not an architect and I'm not a builder, so I was like, well, what's wrong with that? And my colleagues on the council persuaded me, and I think that's a good thing that we are persuadable human beings. They persuaded me that we need to look at this differently, and we need to change the way that it gets laid out. And the administration was not happy; they were upset, and it took a few more weeks. But we did come to a consensus, and it really, that would be a good illustration of, how I would think about those things. Thank you.
All right. Hopi.
Hi, thank you for this question. So I'm an Earlham College graduate, and Earlham is in Richmond, Indiana. If any of you have ever heard of it, I actually have my Earlham water bottle right here. But Earlham College is a college based on, was founded on Quaker principles, and one of those Quaker principles is consensus. So as a young, very impressionable college student, I was really, really enthusiastic about that whole idea of consensus and that idea that you're sitting around in a group, because in any group, there's going to be differences of opinion. You're going to be, even if you have the same goal, everybody is going to see a different path to get there. And so the idea in my forming brain was everybody's throwing in their ideas, and then everybody is voluntarily removing some of their own personal ideas, because all of your ideas are never going to work to fit into the whole. You have to give something up. And the easiest way to do that, I have found, is to give it up yourself, is to go, okay, if this is my priority, I see how this piece of what I'm doing is not fitting into the whole as well as maybe it could. So I am voluntarily going to say, let's go with this other person's idea right now. And that takes listening. It takes intentionality. I have high standards for myself in that way. And I similarly have high standards for other people in that way, because I think that everybody should be able to bring new ideas to the table, and that everybody should be willing to reevaluate their own ideas in the context of the larger whole. And I'm out of time now, so I don't have time for an example either, but thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Connor.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think it's important, as almost everyone has mentioned, to find common ground with people. Throughout my life, I've worked with people who are from across the United States and even different countries such as Turkey and Thailand. And those countries obviously have vastly different cultures than we do in the United States. But I was still able to work with them and still able to become friends with them, actually, and get along with them in the workplace. And so I don't see any reason why I can't do that with people who are from Monroe County, Indiana, which is not nearly as far away as Thailand is. And I'm also learning this every single day in the classroom as I work with people who all want the same thing. We all want to get a good grade. We all want to graduate from the Kelley School of Business. And so it's important for us to keep that goal in mind as we are working together, even though we have different ideas of what success looks like and how we're going to get there. And that's the same thing with being on the city council. We all want Bloomington to be amazing. It's just a matter of how are we getting there. And one thing State Senator J.D. Ford told me when I met him the first time about 3 years ago was, I don't have the same ideas and sometimes values as my Republican colleagues in the state Senate do, but we all want Indiana to be as good as it can be. And if he can still see the good and find common ground with Republicans in the State House, I think I can find common ground with Democrats here in Bloomington and in Monroe County. And so that stuck with me, and that's kind of my guiding principle. And I also think it's important to not always get your way. If I'm getting 100% of what I want, I'm doing something wrong.
All right. District 5 now, Shruti.
Thank you. So I've worked on some of the most contentious civil rights issues of our time. And then I work as an educator where I want to build a supportive environment that fosters learning. And then I've worked as a lawyer where I'm working on the most boring, long contracts and details where everyone's eyes glaze over. And what I've learned from those is that you have to bring people to the table, but really see each other as human beings, right? So this person sitting across from you, they may be on the opposite side of an issue, but they may also be a parent. There's somebody who also has a job or who also cares about their school. And then I've learned that sometimes the most angry people are the ones who are the most passionate about an issue, and they're upset because they care so much. So they want you to listen to them and think about how to work together, actually, even though they're coming across as angry. And the two examples that I want to give are my work on the election board and my launch party. So the election board is 2 Democrats and 1 Republican, and we worked together to almost all of our votes were 3-0, right? Even though these elections and, election integrity and validity or whatever are such polarizing issues in our state, because we wanted everyone to know that their votes mattered and that we had an election full of integrity and work together to have unanimous votes as much as possible. And then the second thing is, at my launch party, I had a couple of staunch Republicans show up to my party. And, and I thought, they came to me and they said, we don't agree with you on any of these issues. I don't mince words when I talk about abortion or LGBTQ rights and things like that.
And we are at time.
I'll tell you later what they said. Stay tuned.
I know. Jenny.
So to provide some context, I was a materials manager and served as the product chair on the safety commission and also for product review, where there were nurses, surgeons, respiratory therapists, a diverse group of people who were constrained by the Joint Commission for Accreditation of Hospitals and OSHA rules and all kinds of safety guidelines. Additionally, I worked with faculty to push grants out over 25 years, and they also had to fall within guidelines, university protocol. When they got the money, they had to follow university rules, and they also had to follow federal guidelines often. And then I served as a program manager in an international lab at IU also, where there were a bunch of people that were on visas, and we were constantly looking at their work authorizations and their visas. So within that context, I've had a lot of tricky situations where people really wanted to do something, but it didn't fall within the guideline. And in that regard, I had to dig deep to find what that guideline was. And the biggest thing I learned is you have to listen with understanding, despite your not wanting to really hear, because it makes you feel vulnerable. You have to focus on the goal. You have to invite their viewpoints. You have to shop the ideas around and get everybody on board. The biggest thing I ever did for IU was to keep a faculty member from leaving when that was not working for that individual. And I did it by taking great personal risk and negotiating with the federal government with some sanctioned approvals. But it was a little bit of a strange situation for me to be in. Thank you.
All right. It's a lot to go. It's a lot to get in 90 seconds. So thank you all for all of that. Yeah. So yeah, we get to start back there. Exactly. Don't get too comfortable. So the next question, and a number of y'all have mentioned climate change, and so our next question is about climate change. So how will you collaborate with community stakeholders, city departments, and community organization to achieve the city's goals to mitigate climate change?
All right. Community, climate change, community.
Yes. How will you collaborate with community stakeholders, city departments, and community organizations to achieve the city's goals to mitigate climate change?
All right. Well, this kind of picks up where I was last, which is understanding all the policies and regulations, the federal rules, and also the responsibilities and the expertise that is in the city department, but also within our city, we have a lot of expertise that sits at IU that I would want to tap into. Once you really know what that is, you dig deep to understand what it is and to look at the newest technologies, the newest things that are out there, and to try to build that into the budget. But you also are going to be shopping around a whole lot of ideas with the people that know the best. Tell me what you know about this. Tell me what your ideas are. The more diverse and the biggest amount of ideas you get on the plate, the more you can do better as a city, because everybody will have a stake in it, everybody will be involved, and we will be enthused and excited. I wanted to also go back to something I didn't answer the first time, which was how I would involve the people within my community, District 5, and that is that most of the neighborhoods have listservs, and so I would be trying to be invited to their listserv and going to their regular meetings, and I would also have some regular meetups with the individuals. And also I would want to care about their climate change initiatives, because in a lot of our neighborhoods we do have environmental issues with erosion, with drainage, and that might be something that would raise all the way up to the council without us being really aware of what's happening. So thank you.
Okay. Shruti.
All right, so I left you on a cliffhanger, and I'm going to tell you the end of that story, which relates to this topic too. So what I was saying is that someone who disagreed with me on all of these really big issues came to me and said, I am here because I support you, and I've seen how much you care, and I know that you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, but I know that you care about me. And that's the attitude that I would bring towards bringing people at all levels of our community together, because climate is affecting all of us. And think about the ways that we can work together. I want to work closely with bringing the federal grants that are out there in the Inflation Reduction Act to Bloomington. My dad was a pioneer in the renewable energy solar cell industry, and so I've learned a lot about how to talk to business people, how to talk to scientists, how to talk to, in racial justice work, how to talk to communities who are impacted, and think about ways that we can meet all of those goals together. Understand that we face a common threat that can only be addressed if we are literally, actually, truly working together.
All right. District 3 candidates, Connor Wright.
When I first joined the Environmental Commission last August, Bloomington was conducting improvements on stormwater drainage on 3rd Street, and Indiana University was also having construction on Campus River. And we were talking in those meetings about how to see how stormwater runoff is affecting the city so that we can avoid flooding like we've had in the past. And we had to engage a lot of stakeholders from the university to the city of Bloomington and people and businesses that were along 3rd Street and on Kirkwood where a lot of the flooding happened. And what we found is that it's really difficult to get Indiana University to collaborate with the city of Bloomington. And I understand why. I mean, Indiana University doesn't have to listen to the city at all if they don't want to. But I think as a student, I can bring a unique perspective that can speak to Indiana University and say, look, I'm paying you thousands of dollars to go to this university. My voice matters here, and you should listen to me, not just as a city council member, but as a student and as someone who attends this university. And so I think I can help bridge that divide. But beyond that, the Environmental Commission also does a tremendous amount of outreach, educating community members on the benefits of solar energy, on the benefits of embracing different gardening practices, such as planting native plants to help the ecosystem, and even educating the community on how we're connecting all of our parks within the city of Bloomington so that wildlife can thrive here and not have to suffer like it does in a lot of cities.
All right. Hope you stop here.
So the first thing I would do, the city of Bloomington has a really great climate action plan right now. It is, I will not pretend that I've read the whole thing because it's a pretty extensive document, but there's a lot of really fantastic ideas in there, a lot of really great initiatives, a lot of data, and you can use that as a jumping off point to actually figure out real plans. And I think that with the multiple ways that I've been involved in this community over the last 10 years, you have to read the plan and then you have to go, okay, who might be good partners for this piece of the plan, and then reach out to those partners. And so one thing that I have read in the climate action plan has to do with waste streams and composting. And something, if I'm remembering my stats right, 40% of things that go into our landfill at this point are compostable. And in my role as an educator, as a mother, I have been in school cafeterias regularly doing different things, and there is a tremendous amount of food waste going on in school cafeterias, and that is a prime population to work with in terms of piloting large-scale composting operations. So it's being able to identify where different community partners might have a particular niche okay, might be able to, really work with them and figure out, okay, what are the barriers to our being partners on this project, and how can we work together to overcome those barriers for the good of the whole and for the ultimate climate change plan. Thank you.
All right, Ron Smith.
Well, I've been a member of the Climate Action Committee for the last couple of years, and the plan, as Hopi said, is it's great. It's a big plan. There's lots of local steps. There's a lot of steps that we can do, and it's really a great plan that was put together by people. The one thing I think of is we need to make sure we have a local focus at this point, so we can actually have action that happens that would come through city council, and you'd vote on it and approve it. The best example recently was we're starting to talk about getting rid of two-stroke engines as far as lawn equipment in Bloomington. And I didn't know anything about that. So I learned from all these smart people, and it's incredibly polluting. And so we can figure out a way to kind of phase that out after the equipment becomes technologically a little bit better. And so what we did is we brought together the Climate Action Committee. We had people in the industry who were doing lawn care. They're doing cut your grass, rake your leaves, blow the stuff. We brought them together at a meeting and said, can we do this? Is this going to be really onerous for your business? And it was a great thing because I expected maybe people would say no, but people were very reasonable. So thank you.
All right, moving down to District 2 candidates. Sorry? Okay. All right, Sus Kimberly. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I would echo much of what my colleagues have said regarding the Climate Action Plan. It's a very strong document, and it has a very good set of guidelines and principles and opportunities for us to pursue where climate response is concerned. Couple I want to highlight in particular. One is the notion of how we respond to growth. Bloomington grows between 1% and 2% every year. That involves new construction. I can't attend a meeting without hearing about, what's the latest large apartment building that's been built here in town. I think we can look at methods for requiring sustainability features in all new construction in terms of materials and energy use. We could also find ways to incentivize the addition of sustainable features in existing buildings. So I think those kinds of things in terms of how we respond to growth are important. I haven't heard a lot yet about public transit, but I think it's critical. We have made some very substantial investments in public transit that are, and speaking as a representative for District 2, there are large areas of my district that are not just underserved, they're unserved by public transit, and that's a problem. So, was that right? Oh, okay, you look like you, okay, all right, you looked like you showed me the wrong card and felt bad. So, so I think that's part of it. Beyond that, the second thing I haven't heard anyone mention is partnerships with the private sector. I was in Michigan not long ago visiting Herman Miller, makers of the Aeron chair, and they send 63 pounds of waste to a landfill.
All right.
The whole factory.
There you go. Thank you. All right, Kate.
Ditto on prioritizing and implementing our climate action plan. So thank you for those coming before me for saying that. For collaboration, I first want to say that climate policy is housing policy, is transportation policy, is food, and our local economy policy. So I think some really neat collaborations could be something, these are very specific, okay, but partnering with the school system. So teaching them young that, yes, composting is something that we can do to divert potentially 40% of our waste from a landfill, and teaching kiddos to grow part of their food at home, right? Because just learning to do that creates a more resilient community and creates like less dependency on a food system where we're bringing that in from other places. I think also partnering with the chamber to help local businesses become greener. So solar panels are quite expensive and they don't necessarily add revenue to your business, right? But if we could create a grant program, right, or some kind of incentive program for small businesses around our town to have solar, that would be great as a renewable energy source. I think incentivizing not just single family homeowners, but apartment owners to also add solar and figure out, doing something in a more creative way. So billing for electric in a different way so everyone gets to have the benefits of renewable energy. I would also just say when we rebuild our systems, we must make sure that we are doing it in a way to promote equity and justice.
We're at time.
Thank you.
All right, District 1 candidates, starting with Isabel.
Yes, thank you for the question. So the Climate Action Plan was a collaborative process that took about a year to develop. We had a consultant, but they met with many experts from IU, from community organizations, from Solid Waste District and other places to come up with a plan. And it does have very specific goals, and it says things like, work with Indiana University to reduce pesticide use, things like that. So we're going to try. I've been working on the same committee as Ron, the city's Climate Action and Resilience Committee. So working on phasing out leaf blowers as a good starting point. The Solid Waste Management Board of Directors is another group that I am serving on, and we collaborated with the city of Bloomington on studying whether an anaerobic digester could be installed in the Dillman wastewater treatment plant. And this is any day now we'll get the study back, and I believe signs point to yes, if I believe the magic 8-ball terminology there. But this would be a way to actually generate methane to run that waste district. So it's a great project. We're also collaborating on the Solid Waste District and the city on a composting pilot program for multifamily housing. So in apartment buildings, people could actually recycle. Communication is key, and egos have to be put aside. We must admit that no one entity can solve these problems, and that no one entity or person has all the right answers.
Well, I would say the first thing is that, we can look outside Bloomington and we can see the way climate change is affecting the rest of the country and the rest of the world. But we need to look within Bloomington to see the way it affects us. We have had massive flooding in Bloomington in the last few years. And if infrastructure isn't kept up, and we have neighborhood after neighborhood, the core neighborhoods without sidewalks and sewer drains and just on and on. When you wake up after a storm and you have 3 feet of water in your basement, and you're glad that people in the neighborhood have basements because it has somewhere for the water to go. And we've seen it over and over. So there are all kinds of ideas. The climate action plan is a great idea, and it needs to. The important thing is, as you transition, you work with everybody to transition at the same time. I think of things like public transit, and the Beeline Trail is a wonderful, wonderful thing, but it replaced the railroad tracks that used to be our transit system to all the way to Chicago and beyond, all the way down to Miami. I used to take the trains quite often, take it up to Indianapolis and then across to New York. That's the kind of public transportation we really need to pay attention to.
We're at time. All right. Thank you. And you're going to go back the same way, starting with Mr. Lee. And our next question relates to mental health. And so what do you see as the key mental health challenges facing our community, and how do you plan to address them? Starting with District 1 candidates with Mr. Lee.
Well, I'm glad that I've gotten an easy question. That, we can look at a lot of what is happening in Bloomington and beyond. We are talking about national and regional issues. Is when during the Reagan administration and across the country, they started closing the institutions. A lot of them were horrible places, but they should have been changed into good places where people could actually get mental health services. So I was living in New York, in the city in the 80s, the number of people who had been turned out of places where they had a roof and they had food. So We have here in Bloomington, we have Centerstone, we have other addiction and mental health services, and we need to work with our region. It's not just Bloomington. The region, we are surrounded by counties that have no services. And so the only place people can go for services is Bloomington. And they might be better off in a smaller town where they know people that would help them, but there are no services there. So I think working within the region is the way that we can begin this process.
Okay.
Yes, the city of Bloomington can and should support better mental health services, and let me throw in substance misuse treatment services as well. We need to continue awarding Jack Hopkins social service grants and actually increase that funding amount that we have available every year. Nonprofit agencies have come to depend on that money to keep their very valuable services going. We must also use opioid settlement funds. We have about $2 million coming to us over the next 15 years. We need to use that to support local prevention, treatment, and harm reduction programs in collaboration with the county, which also has a significant amount of funding coming. We need to bring together key regional and local stakeholders and expertise to work on solutions to the drug misuse crisis. People are dying in this community due to fentanyl, meth, and opioid use. We need to support the agencies that are battling this, and in the process, we need to listen to those with lived experience and incorporate their ideas into our community's plans.
All right, District 2. Start with Kate.
Thank you very much. I think this is very much, it can be tackled very much locally and regionally, and just echoing a lot of what Isabel just said. I would say, just adding on to that, I would say, mental health is public health, and we need to look at it in a very holistic way, and a lot of times we don't do that. So I think one thing, we have the Heading Home initiative, and I think housing folks who don't have homes is a really wonderful way to start, so we can take something off their plate, right, and get a roof over their head and make them help them feel safer, hopefully, before we start tackling some of the tough issues that they are dealing with every day. I also think continuing to allocate funds toward non-police alternatives is very, very important here. So continuing to support the nonprofits doing recovery work and doing treatment work in our community. I think jail is not a place for recovery, and it does much more harm than good. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing you've already heard mentioned is the local nonprofit community, the local social service network we have here is formidable, and they deserve our support, and they've used it well for years. So through the Jack Hopkins Social Service Grant Program, CDBG block grants, we can continue to support those that have a great deal of expertise and passion around these issues. So I think that's important. I do favor a balance of harm reduction and actual treatment. So I think that needs to be the approach. I would also like to see additional supportive housing. Kinzer Flats is located in District 2 up on the north side. We have others, they have their challenges, but the Housing First model seems to suggest to us that we realize we cannot incarcerate our way out of this problem or arrest our way out of this problem, and that housing is often a very critical first step to actually getting all of these other issues resolved. So beyond that, I would also, the one thing I haven't heard mentioned yet, our continued investments in public safety for current training, so that our staff, both our sworn officers and our non-sworn officers, have the most current training in how to respond to these challenges besides arrest, besides incarceration. Because I think very often they are the first to come in contact with, and they need that kind of training so they respond in a way that's consistent with our community's values.
All right, District 3 candidates.
Thank you. Working for the state of Indiana, I had opportunity to look at Medicaid and billings and different things and in different systems I worked in. One of the things that's happening or has happened is that it makes not only Medicaid, but our insurance program makes it incredibly difficult to be able to pay for mental health services in an appropriate manner. If things get really bad, yes. They're not. Generally, no. It's really a challenge. I'd like to see that change. Now, can we do that at the local level? Probably not, but we can do things at the local level that are really important. We can help enhance the mental health services through Jack Hopkins, where some of my colleagues have talked about. And I've been on the Jack Hopkins committee for about 3 years now. We give funds to agencies who are doing the good work. And we need to make sure we have a good mental health component in our jail system. Right now, I think the answer is we're struggling with that. So we need to give people our support in the county and our current sheriff to increase the mental health things and treatment in our jails. Anyway, okay. Well, one other thing, the Stride Center in Bloomington that was developed so that when people are identified as having trouble out there, and instead of being arrested, they get brought there and then they get referred to different services. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. I think the first part of this question started out asking what is a key mental health challenge facing the community. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
So I don't think that anybody has actually stated, but I'll go ahead and say it. One of the key challenges is that there are so many people in need of mental health services, and I will add addiction services in there as well. That is the challenge. There are just so many people out there who need it, and there are so many people out there who are not getting it, even though there are lots of different organizations that have it in this town. And I think that I think the pandemic made mental health much more challenging. So in terms of solving that problem, as Ron just said, it is a not just a local problem, it is a state problem, it is a national problem with mental health right now. And you can start as small as possible by giving aid and continuing support of those organizations that have that specialty. But one of the huge things about it, I mean, if people are having mental health struggles and then they're also having issues with food security, also having issues with housing security, then they can't actually address their mental health struggles. And so that just makes those struggles worse. So I do think also we need to put more effort toward housing security, affordable housing, housing affordability, food security as well. We have some food deserts in this town, and that needs to be addressed as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First and foremost, mental health is obviously a huge challenge for our community, and especially for marginalized members of our community. My LGBTQ plus friends are struggling with mental health in a lot of cases, and some of that's because of the state legislature and the amount of discrimination and hate that is directed in their way from the state legislature. And I imagine that's the case for many other groups of minorities in our community as well. And while I can't unfortunately control the state legislature and stop them from hurting my friends and our community, what we can do is create community spaces here in Bloomington that where people of the same communities can gather and can meet each other and really find a place that they belong, that shows that Bloomington is a safe place for them. It is a home for them. It's somewhere that they can be their true selves in. It's really tough if you're the only LGBTQ plus person that you see every day. And if we had a place where they could all gather and meet each other and really show support, I think that would do wonders for the mental health. I know that would do wonders for the mental health, actually, because as my friends meet each other and get to know one another, they become happier and really express themselves in ways I think are tremendous. And we should also work with the county health department because it really has a lot of resources that the city does not have and a lot of knowledge and know-how, and we should definitely utilize the county health department.
Thank you.
Right, District 5.
So we know that the pandemic has pushed a lot of us to the brink, and we know that mental health issues are escalating all over our city and county. And I've been working on a long-term research project on what we call the COVID care crisis, about how to address some of these issues. And number one, I would look at building and supporting the continuum of care, understanding mental health issues and accompanying issues as something that's holistic, needs holistically to be addressed from start to finish. You've heard about somebody has a mental health issue, then they lose their job, then they get evicted, then their family is in crisis, right? And in the legal world, I've been looking at this idea of a one-stop shop as a way to address that. Somebody has an eviction issue, they can go to the same place and get mental health resources. They can go to the same place and get substance abuse resources. And this is the way, these are the reasons that I support things like universal pre-K, right? It's not just the education. It's when you have universal pre-K, you can make sure that children who aren't getting meals at home get food at school. They get health services, they get vaccinations, and then they can, teachers will see the warning signs of what's happening at home, and they can get the family's resources and care, right? So that's an example of how every piece of, whatever we do in terms of housing, transportation, affordability, all of these things fit together and support one another, and we just really need to focus on where are the weakest links in our continuum of care and how can we build those up. Thank you.
Well, this is a really important issue for many of us because we all want to be mentally healthy and we all want to be secure. And everyone at this table has brought up so much in regard to how our community cares and the resources. The opioid settlement will be a wonderful resource. The programmings and the people who are running the programs through our social service networks and the support the city has done through the Jack Hopkins Fund, it's phenomenal. And Bloomington is known as a place that has a big heart, and people from across the state send their people here because they know that we won't let them fall through as much as we can. But we have to address something that Shruti kind of suggested, which is this epidemic of loneliness. Loneliness is a big thing. We did experience that in COVID, but we experienced it before, and it really impacts mental health. Everybody needs to have community. They need to have connection. And then when they experience episodes of any kind of mental instability, they have a catch-all. They have a connection. They can get to the services. Right now, we have individuals who can't get there. They need our help to get access to the services and to understand how the housing and how everything else impacts them and to make them more secure. So we need to destigmatize the mental health. We need to build the community around those individuals, and we keep needing to work on this because it's going to be something we're going to need to do forever. Thank you.
Okay. We are now going to move to closing statements. So everyone has 1 minute to provide their closing statements. And we're going to go back in ascending order from District 1 down to District 5. So we will start with Mr. Lee. I think so, yeah. that was exactly my intention.
Well, I would just say this has been a great forum. A lot of wonderful ideas out there by everyone. I'd just say a little bit more about myself. For 5 years, I worked for the Bloomington Township Trustee's Office, and trustees' offices exist for assistance. And it is a great first line. It's also, as Bloomington Township and Perry Township are split, they split Bloomington, you get to know a community that needs assistance. And these are our neighbors. They're not charity cases. These are, when I was at the Interfaith Winter Shelter, I volunteered there for 6 years and still see people at the breakfast on at First Christian Church on Sunday mornings. That these are our neighbors, these are our people, and everyone is a constituent. So I guess that does it for me.
Thank you to all of the co-sponsors of this very good event. The questions have been excellent. And thank you to my colleagues also. My name is Isabel Piedmont Smith. I'm running for re-election to the City Council in District 1. My priorities include making local government more inclusive. Residents must be involved in their city government decision-making, and the city's processes must be clear and easy to follow. Number 2, implementing the 2021 Climate Action Plan, which we've already talked about quite a bit. This includes investing in more buses and bike routes, utilizing green infrastructure for stormwater, and reducing emissions through local food network. Strengthening the social safety net is number 3, and while Bloomington is a vibrant place to live, there are too many residents that are struggling to thrive in our community. The city must collaborate with others to provide more affordable housing, greater accessibility to physical and mental health care, and additional substance misuse treatment options. I'm willing and ready to do more to make Bloomington a better place than what I found it. Thank you.
All right, to District 2.
Hi there. Thank you to the co-sponsors for this event, and thank you very much to the League for the wonderful, and I would really call it an incredible 411.org with all of our candidate information. I've given that to so many folks, and I am very appreciative that that resource exists. I just want to, I guess, reiterate that I am running for re-election because I think Bloomington has a very wonderful opportunity to do better for all of its residents. And I think that means that recognizing that while some of us are doing okay, there are a lot of us that are not doing okay. And it's very important for me to center equity and justice in decision making. And it really means focusing for me on making things better, not just for people today, but the next generation. Equity looks at outcomes, and I think we really have to look at our racial and social disparities in housing, in transit, in business ownership, and speak to those root causes and make decisions that bring everyone up. And that's it. So thank you very much. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm going to try and bring this in under a minute, just for fun. No, not at all. As we've heard during this afternoon's conversation, the city is thriving in many ways, and we can be proud of many things here. And we have more work to do. The issues that we face as a city and as neighborhoods are complicated. And the questions and the decisions that come before council are often difficult and nuanced. To do our best work, to make the best decisions for our city, our council needs public servants, emphasis on the word servants, who bring energy and a solid work ethic, an understanding of the needs and opportunities in our neighborhoods among our neighbors, a demonstrated ability and a willingness to work across government units, demonstrated respect for varied viewpoints, and balanced, broad-based insight and expertise. I believe that's what I can offer to my neighbors on Bloomington's Northwest Side. If you are among my neighbors there, I would be honored to have your vote before May 2nd. If you'd like to find out more about my campaign, sueforcitycouncil.com will provide some more details for you.
Time.
No, I don't want that microphone. I stand on my council record, and I believe you're right to vote for, and you're right for who you think best represents you and the diverse needs of our Bloomington community. As chair of the Sidewalk Committee, I voted to increase the social equity criteria so more sidewalks will be built in traditionally underserved areas. I voted against the conversion of single-family homes into duplexes and quadplexes in core neighborhoods. I opposed the recent proposal by the mayor of tripling your trash pickup fees. I voted to increase police salaries and benefits to competitive levels. I voted against annexation as a member of the Climate Action Committee, trying to respond to those issues. I voted against buying the Showers building to relocate the police, and I advocated the city spend $20 million of the ARPA funds on homelessness issues in workforce housing. My record's been pragmatic. I hope you'll vote for me on May 2nd. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you all for coming to this forum, and the League of Women Voters for having it, and all of the other co-sponsors, because there were a lot of them. I've really enjoyed the questions being asked here today, and I enjoyed hearing everybody's answers too. District 3 is a really geographically diverse district, and in my experience, my lived experience as a parent, as an educator, as a volunteer with the unhoused population, as a volunteer with refugee resettlement, as a volunteer with youth groups and their families, I think that has prepared me well to be able to represent and understand the concerns of such a large and diverse district. And I don't want to go over time, but I think that I can very well serve the residents of District 3, and I hope you consider voting for me in the May primary. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone that put on this forum. As much as I love forums, I enjoy going and talking to people individually even more. So if anyone has any questions for me at the end of this or just has thoughts that they want to share, I'd be happy to listen. I've spent all of my life learning about community and working on my leadership skills, whether that was earning my Eagle Scout rank in Boy Scouts, which I'm very proud of, and it's one of the greatest things that I've done in my life, bettering my local elementary school, or whether that's being here in Bloomington and trying to engage students and get students to really have a say in what's going on in our community. I've spent a long time trying to get people involved in government and trying to demonstrate leadership skills. And if I'm lucky enough to be elected, I will be the first undergraduate on Bloomington City Council in its history, and probably the only renter, which are very, very large and important demographics. Okay, not the only renter, but very large and important demographics in the city. Thank you.
District 5.
Thank you. Well, I will tell a story I've told before that serves as one of my inspirations for running, but also my promise to all of you. So I was working with some of you in the room on the response to anti-Asian hate and the FedEx shootings in Indianapolis. And I was incredibly touched by the story of a sick gentleman who was asked, when you're faced with this kind of discrimination and prejudice and bias, why don't you just give up? And why don't you just leave? And he said, no, my answer is that I will dig roots so deep into the soil that they reach the bedrock and they shift the foundations upon which our country was built. And that will be my promise to you. I will dig the deepest roots. We can look at climate resilience, housing, education, transportation, healthcare, investments, and jobs. And I will never give up fighting for the people of Bloomington and listening to what you want and what you need. And by bringing the strongest roots, I think we can meet any challenge we have facing us. Thank you.
So the city of Bloomington performs an essential service, and some of these services aren't so sexy: sewer, water, utilities, police and fire, some economic development and funding, some social initiatives. In all of my leadership roles, I served as a support person, even though I was in leadership. And within those support roles, I had to take a larger mission, and I had to make sure that I was focused on that larger mission and that I was promoting that mission and that I was working with a diverse group of people. It is what I would intend here to do for Bloomington. It is what I've done in the past in all of my roles. And in the service I've done with MCCSC, the school corporation, which has been behind the scenes, I dug in deep in 2010. I helped lead that referendum. It passed for our students. That's the kind of investment I want to make now as your District 5 representative. Thank you.
All right, so let's have an applause for all of our candidates. Want to thank again the services provided by League of Women Voters. If you did not feel, y'all at home did not feel like you had a chance to fully digest everything, the Vote 411 site is available on the Bloomington League of Women Voters website that allows you to look at all of the candidates and do a compare contrast. It's a really, really, really wonderful resource. You can also find links to all the upcoming forums that are coming up, because we've got a lot more mayoral forums, city council at large, other city council district candidates, and I see a lot of people here who are organizing some of those, and I would love to be able to name all of them, but I know that I would forget them. But shout out to all of y'all who are bringing candidates together. Thanks again to folks at CATS. Thanks to Neil Marshall. They're not here now, but the maintenance staff, all the people who keep our waste baskets clean and keep this floor nice and shiny, do such an important service so that we can have these events here today. And thank you to all of you for being here and being engaged in your community. It's truly an honor to be with y'all today. Thank you so much, and hope y'all can enjoy some of this lovely day that we have. Thank you, everyone.